Hey, how's it going? So there's a channel I watch on YouTube called Moderate Rebels. It's with Max Blumenthal and I forget the other guy, but you should check Moderate Rebels out. I'm sure many on the left are familiar with Max Blumenthal. If you're not, Max Blumenthal uh, it should be well known because he was there was reports all over the place on especially on social media, left independent media, about his arrest, and all the crap that was happening. um, uh, Max Max is in my opinion, he's a phenomenal journalist, real journalist, not the fake journalist that we have in the U.S. and in the West. Um, so, anyways, there's a recent Moderate Rebels video episode that just came out. I just saw it. I think it's about 3 or 4 hours old now. I was just watching it, and it's about the coronavirus and hybrid warfare on China with a guy named Pepe Escobar. Um, Check that out. And ironically, before all the conspiracies that's been popping up on social media, and it's actually been in the lamestream propaganda media in the West, particularly in the United States, about how the virus was actually something that the U.S. had basically engineered to go over to China. Uh, this is when the early stages, when they were all over China about how China had a breakout of coronavirus, when they're first being reported about that. I remember thinking that, with all the stuff that I have found out over the years about all the shit that the U.S. and the West have done, uh, like more recently the fake chemical weapons attacks in Syria, um, the connection with how the U.S. was supplying the chemical weapons to uh, oh God, I can't think of the guy's name. He's dead now. He was the president or leader of Iraq during the Iraq War. Uh, Anyways, and how he used that against the Kurds, um, and how the U.S. was directly connected to the sale of those chemical weapons that Saddam Hussein used. Um, so, and never mind what the Trail of Tears during the U.S. history, which is so not what's in the history books that are taught when you're going to school, uh, from from kindergarten to 12th grade. Um, it's all the savage Indians, and how it was the Indians who betrayed the colonists, were the ones that were all the violent ones, and it was only they were protecting themselves. So that whole narrative in the history books, which is complete crap, and how I found out later, much later, how they were using diseased blankets handing them out to the indigenous on the Trail of Tears, and how that they were using viral warfare back then. So the U.S. and the West have a track record of doing abominable things. So in my mind, I already started to question whether whether or not if the U.S. had something to do with it. Oh, and there was also when SARS and MERS and all that all that other stuff, anthrax and Ebola and all that. I kept on asking myself, why is it that why is it that all these places that these viruses and diseases pop up are all ideological enemies of the U.S. and the West? Why is it that it always pops up that way? And the narrative that they're ignorant savages. Basically, that's they weren't using those terms, or they're such evil people, or and and so they were the ideological enemies, or the places that should be that needed a firm the moral hands of the West. This is something that's been happening in my mind. The connections, which are slowly coming up in my mind, I I, I started to question with that, and like, why is that? And so when this no new thing with the coronavirus popped up, and with the more recent uh, information I had received. When I say recent, within the past 10 years or more, or slightly more, I started I started to question it, and then with the media, what they're doing, and what the U.S. and the West has been doing against their ideological enemies. I I had strong reservations already, but now I was getting to the point where I was almost, it's got to be the West doing this. It's got to be the U.S. And I make a point in my video on my videos that I'm not, when I'm talking about the West, I'm not talking about the people of the West. I'm talking about the illegitimate world class criminals who hold power in the West. And so, and that would be your governments, your government agencies, the media, the religious orders, particularly the Christian religious orders. Um, so, uh, and I think I remember making a video about how uh, many of the people who hold power in the West are uh, are are trying, either have hereditary connection or ideological connections to the time of the Roman Empire, and how the Roman Empire, while it doesn't exist in reality, but in mind it still does. And so uh, I've also done a video on how the Roman Catholic Church is basically, and the creation of the Christian God is basically a engineered product of a Roman Empire emperor. Uh, so I so while I'm this is conjecture on my part, but it's one that I strongly believe. The Moderate Rebels episode that I was just watching, video I was just watching, with Pepe Escobar, uh, and watch the video so you can understand why I'm coming to the conclusions I am, strongly indicates that my suspicions, my strong suspicions, are correct. And so, and you only have to listen to the unhinged rantings of like Matt Stoller, who's making China out to be this demonic entity, who's a danger to the world when it's. But that's the narrative they want to push. The ideological enemies of the West are the demonic creatures who want to destroy everything. But if you're paying attention, if you're really looking at it with an open mind, if you're really critically thinking, you understand it's the West who are the demonic creatures, who are the ones hell bent on destroying everything. And throw logic, enlightened self-preservation, throw all of it away for the immediate, for the immediate conclusion of their present and immediate obsessions and wants. This is the ideology of Western rulers and all the sycophants and wannabes rulers in the West. That is, and this has been happening, and I talk about this has been happening since before there was TV and radio, before there was internet and social media. I've talked about town criers, and when first the printing press came about, how that was used, and understand it's always people who have money, who can buy the voices and the people that write propaganda, who can spread this, and that's a fault of us. If we would only critically think and educate ourselves, and take the effort in a self-enlightened way, in self-preservation, to forcefully combat this sort of thing, then we would not be in the present situation we are today. If we did not sell our children to go out and fight for these demented, ruthlessly demented, and insane rulers who use ideology and lies and deceit to get us out there to fight. Because every war in history has always been for the benefit of the ruling class. Whether they are self-appointed and find a way to power, or those who are handed power by us. We all seem to forget that there are far, far more of us than there are of them. And it is they who should fear us, except they have been given the gift of we fear them. Numerically, we vastly outnumber them. It is this whole idea that nonviolence or free speech now, that's a one-way street. Those are both one-way streets in favor of the ruling class and those that they give crumbs, a little bit more advantage to. We are the many, and that we should be using. Because in every war, there has always been an aggressor, and those aggressors have been the ruling class. And the reason why they are the aggressors is because we have been weak. We have been the pitiful. We have been the unwashed peasant serf masses. And in that, we are cowards. Because if we cannot stand up for ourselves, then we cannot stand up for our children. And if children are the greatest treasures and resources, then we have failed. We have failed our children. Not just in this generation, not just in the present, but in hundreds of thousands of years. We have failed our children. And we have thrown our quote unquote love in their faces. And we have sold them into bondage even before they have been born. We must show force. And one of the least violent ways is not to participate. It is to band together and say, no, we don't want you, we don't need you, go the fuck away. And come together as a community, because it is community. It is our family, our friends, our relatives, our acquaintances who make up the community. And when that community gets larger, that's what creates a country. And we should know we can rule ourselves. We should believe that we can think for ourselves. We should know we can take care of ourselves. We should know that we can solve things for ourselves. But we need to have curiosity. We need to have will. We need to have drive to learn. Not just to learn, but remember. Because we are capable of doing that. We do not need a God. We do not need a Savior. We do not need a master to serve or guide us. We should serve. We should guide. We should educate. We should move forward. We should evolve. We should strive for wisdom. That is how we build a better world. A world which we leave better for our offspring. We should understand that violence is a part of existence, and that if we want to live, then we must know in wise wisdom when to use violence. Because violence is a part of natural law, and natural law states that without using appropriate amount of violence for the appropriate situations, such as those who are predatory, such as those who are predatory and want control, that we need to use appropriate violence to subdue such weaknesses, such avarice, to put them in their place. Because we are all animals now. We are clever animals, but yeah, we are all animals. But we want to be greater than animals. We cannot call ourselves more than animals when we act exactly like the animals we so look down upon. When we live exactly like they do, when all we do is scrounge for our basic needs and fulfillments of immediate pleasure. Because that is what animals do. And we, for all our clever conveniences, we act exactly like animals. And if we aspire to be greater, to have a greater understanding, and build a world, and when I talk about a world, I'm talking about a human world that is better, that does not exhaust the resources that the natural world gives us freely. And we can leave a better natural world for our next generation. Then what are we? Are we truly different than the animals? I mean, think about it. With all our clever conveniences, our smartphones, our smart devices, the way we construct our residences and homes and so on and so forth, are we much? No. For weapons, tools, no. There's no difference. Understand, if we want to be more than animals, we need to start thinking critically. We need to start moving forward. We need to reach for that wisdom and enlightenment. Because only in that way will we have peace. And only in that way will we have liberty, will we have freedom. That is the only way we can move forward, because we can have the clever conveniences. We don't need to live like Amish. We can have the clever conveniences and have a world that can sustain us, a natural world that can sustain us, that keeps us healthy and happy, that gives us a future where we can strive to go beyond the natural world of the earth and expand outward. We can have all that, a Star Trek future and all that other stuff. But we won't have that if we continue to be the animals who just consume and follow and fall prey to the predators. Thank you for your time. And check out the Moderate Rebels. I follow the Intercept, the Moderate Rebels, many other channels like that. So check it out. Get more informed, because that's my driving purpose. Get more informed. Because when you're more informed, you you that's when you want to serve the whole and not just yourself. Because you come to understand that self is meaningless, that the whole is what matters. And by doing right for the whole, you do right for the self. Thank you.